Hey guys, Youngblood with you to cover the Q&A that we got on the Aegis Eclipse, and I think we got some interesting information here regarding what the ship is going to be, as well as some of the balancing information. And we get to start off with a question regarding what does stealth actually mean in Star Citizen. Now, component ratings and classes are going to impact how hard you are to be picked up via scanners and radar. And we know that comes in the form of IR and EM signatures in-game, as well as your ship's cross-section. Now, in-game, we find out that there's going to be 5 classes of components, though they may add more later, being military, civilian, industrial, competition, and stealth. With stealth being the lowest emission, but it doesn't necessarily have the same raw power or durability that some of the other options have. So we can probably make some assumptions there based on like competition focusing on output, industrial focusing on power, civilian maybe focusing on efficiency, like those types of things. So we'll get more information on that, but it was an interesting look into how they're classifying these things. The Eclipse comes with all stealth components. The Saber is going to be a mix of stealth and military, being a little bit more aggressive ship, and the Ghost is going to be kind of a mix of stealth and civilian. But we do also know that the components are not going to be locked to the hull, so it would be possible to use components that are on the Eclipse for other ships to lower its signature, or potentially from other ships to this ship to increase its output. But obviously, any changes that you make to a ship are not going to impact the cross-section signature because the size of the ship isn't changing. But what we do know is that you're going to start being able to customize really any ship to how you want it to play and how you want it to act in engine. Now, a question was asked about the Eclipse having size 9 torpedoes, and if that was game-breaking considering the Retaliator has size 9 already and the Polaris has size 10. And the question was that really the ship was designed to have size 9s from the beginning, but there's some obvious trade-offs there, like not being able to defend itself well or holding up well under fire, and the fact that it's not very agile either. The bigger torpedoes also take longer to lock, so they're not going to be a great option against fighters, so the ship is going to be very vulnerable to them. Now, it looks like we get some balancing information on the bombers too, including the Eclipse, Polaris, Retaliator, Harbinger, and Gladiator. Range is one of the biggest factors with the Polaris, Retaliator, and Harbinger all being designed for longer range runs. The Eclipse and the Gladiator don't really get the same range ability because they don't have the interior amenities to support a longer trip. However, the Eclipse, it sounds like it's going to have at least mid-range ability compared to the shorter range on the Gladiator that tends to be more of a carrier-focused bomber. Now, as far as maneuverability is concerned, the Eclipse falls into the middle, with the Gladiator and really even the Harbinger supposedly to be more nimble, with the Polaris and the Retaliator are obviously bigger and don't need the maneuverability based on the turret coverage that they have. They also go on to say that the Eclipse is so dependent on the torpedoes that once they're gone, it's going to end up in a lot of trouble. But the others are all able to utilize more weaponry and crew to continue an assault for longer periods of time. At the end of the day, we get the Polaris, which is really in a class of its own, with bigger torpedoes, bigger and more turrets, and really being a capital ship focused on patrol for larger bombardments. The Retaliator is designed to bring more torpedoes with an ability to protect itself and being the dedicated longer range bomber of bigger targets. The Harbinger has a smaller payload, but also has much superior forward-facing weaponry, including a rocket turret up top and longer range, so it kind of falls in that middle ground of bomber and fighter. The Gladiator is focused on smaller, quicker jaunts hosted via a carrier, but should also be able to do some dogfighting. And then we have the Eclipse, which really has to get in undetected and drop torpedoes and get out, because they all but say that the weapons on the ship are a formality. Now, the phrasing that they actually use is deterrent, but we get an unmaneuverable craft with small weapons and lacking durability, basically making a situation to where you can't stay around for long. So we do also get confirmation in regards to the speed, though, that it is going to be pretty quick, matching that of the Gladius. Structurally, the torpedo bay does not get modules or the ability to really do anything else, so stealthy cargo runs or smuggling is not going to be an option for this ship, basically making its purpose very singular. It's even more focused knowing that you can't swap the big torpedo mounts for smaller missiles, so it doesn't share the flexibility that the Gladiator ends up having in that regard. The torpedoes are going to be able to lock onto anything, or to fire at anything it can actually lock onto. So you're going to be able to attack ground targets that end up having a signature as well, so you're not going to be limited to space. But you are going to have a larger signature when you're in atmospheric flight mode, though it should still be pretty low compared to other ships. Now, in regards to size, they confirm that it's will not fit in a Polaris, but it will fit into a Javelin. And while the Idris wasn't specifically mentioned, based on the size and what we've seen elsewhere, it should fit into an Idris. But we're going to have to keep an eye on that as it moves through development, considering ships tend to grow through that process. There were some like rock, paper, scissors types of questions, specifically in regards to ships like the Terrapin versus the Eclipse, and talking about like stealth and scanning. And they say that the Terrapin should be able to pick up the Eclipse, but it's not going to just be expecting them to pop up on radar passively. The radar operator is really going to need to be focusing in a certain area, or really looking for a threat like that to be able to detect it. And even if it is able to pick up the ship before the strike, the question then becomes, would the ship actually be able to alert the fleet in order to let them react in time to do anything? In regards to the balance of power, CIG states that with shields down, the Aegis would be crippled by two Eclipse payloads, and that brings up some interesting questions and assumptions. For example, based on that, a single Retaliator should be able to do the same thing, carrying twice the same size torpedoes, though it's likely, or it's less likely to be able to land those shots with the shields down, considering it's going to have a larger signature and it would be detected sooner. That also makes us wonder a little bit why the Aegis would have its shields down in the first place, and if there's any obvious benefits to it doing that, or really, I guess I should say, benefits that we don't know about, because we know about signature, and that would be one reason to keep shields off. But a ship of the Aegis' size, there's not much of a chance it's going to get anywhere undetected anyway, so why do you have the shields down on the ship? It may just be a balancing statement, or we may end up getting more information on that, so we're going to need to kind of wait and see. I also do wonder what impact torpedoes are going to have to shields, and how long it would actually take to get an Aegis shields down via torpedoes, and if that's even a smart option. With all of that being said, they mentioned that the Eclipse would be able to do some damage, but with capital ships, it would be better suited to be a first strike option, and then sustain the fight with heavier hitters like Retaliators and Gladiators and Harbingers, basically ships that are capable of sticking around. I think based on the size of the torpedoes and knowing that shields are likely, to be down, I think it's going to... I think the usefulness of the ship is a little bit in question here. Though, if you're talking about a situation to where your targets are going to be sub-capital, then you're going to end up seeing some value in the ship. Though I think there are other ships that end up fitting into the role. At the end of the day, we get a ship that is very, very singularly focused on its role, really designed to get in, undetected, drop torpedoes, and get out. And if that's what you're looking for, this ship should be about the best option that you're going to have in that arena. There's probably some applications to this outside of just military operations. And if you start talking about from a piracy stance, like maybe one of these torpedoes is enough to disable a cargo hauler, so you're able to get in and take care of business. Or, maybe one of these ships in a bounty hunting type of role is part of a good operation to where you can get in, disable a ship, and then board and then capture whoever you're looking for. I think there are going to be some interesting gameplay aspects that play off of what this ship does well. And regardless of what the purpose of your mission is, if your decision is to get in undetected and drop some torpedoes and do some big damage, this is the ship for you. The price is high, probably more than I would want it to be still. I don't necessarily think the value is there, but if that's what you want to do, that specific type of role, regardless of the larger picture, there's not going to be a ship that does it better than the Eclipse. So, I think it also brings up some interesting things that we're going to need to consider. And as a Polaris owner, I'm going to be keeping an eye on this ship, because something like this could be a pretty big threat to some of my larger ships that I have, and it's going to be something that I need to keep in mind. And then we get back to that rock, paper, scissors decision again, and now all of a sudden, am I better off carrying something like a Terrapin in my Polaris instead of a Saber? We don't really know, but it's going to be one that I'm going to really monitor as we go through the game and we get it into development, and we'll have to see what the larger impact is to gameplay based on this ship being there. So if you guys have questions on any of this, please let me know. If you guys are kind of taking any of this information in a different way, put them in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay tuned for more, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.